Good evening. This is William Needham. This is the Mycological Association of Washington, D.C. And this is our Pearl Harbor Day 2021 meeting, the last one of the year. And that's a time of reflection, I guess. The end of the year is when you do things like resolutions for next year and take stock and the top 100 hits of the year. And so it's also a time of, sunrise or sunset. And so I thought I'd start with this as our lead-in slide. And there's a reason for that. And just to get your interest and enthusiasm for going through the fungi in the news, that has something to do with fungi in the news. So hopefully it's sunrise and not sunset. As you know, that's the famous analogy that Ben Franklin observed on the chair. That was at the First Continental Congress. It was a sunrise, and he was always wondering if it was sunrise or sunset. And he said, "Oh, I see it's sunrise," when they finally signed the Constitution. Anyway, I had Winter Foray I last month, if you didn't see it. So Winter Foray, what I'm getting at is in the winter, there's not a whole lot of fungi out. So you tend to go look in strange places. And last time it was the Wizard of Id looking on a tree trunk for moss. So this is zits. And so don't try to grow fungi in your bathroom, although they will grow in wet, damp places where there's lots of mold. So anyway, this is it gives you the state of the art, what people think about mushrooms, which is some kind of fungus anyway, maybe toadstools. My thanks, by the way, to Rick Silber for sending that to me. So this is the out with the old slide. Since we're changing the board this year, this is the board for 2021, which is officially off after tonight. As usual, remind you that you can contact any member of the board at any time that you want. And that's by going to the name of the particular office that they hold, board position, and at MAWDC.org or info or anything else. I used to get it, but Elizabeth Hargrave, who will be the president next year as our New Year's resolution, will be getting them from here on out. I'm sure she will be as diligent as I was in answering them and trying to send whatever you send in to the appropriate board member. Most of the board positions have there's a few people moved around. Of course, I'm moving to first vice president to, I've been president for 5 years now, so it's time to move on, certainly, but it's also time to, with all that background, to keep close touch, which I will. Also, John Harper's moving into programs from culinary. And April Thompson is a new board member who is going to take over culinary. Tom McCoy, who is our esteemed program chair and has been for quite some time, is going to become mycology committee chair. So he's not on the board, but mycoflora, I should say. So he will be very active in that. If you're interested in sequencing DNA, he's going to take that over. And then Bruce Boyer, who was NAMA representative, goes to second vice president, and Connie Durnan, who's a former board member, goes in as NAMA representative. So everybody else is pretty much as they were. You don't want to change too much at one time. Usually 3 to 4 board members is about right. So as usual, I am providing our programming out for the next few months. And tonight's program will be reviewed at the end of this brief introduction. Next month, we have the history of fungi, which is quite interesting, by Django Rootmeier. He was our presidenter at Sequinotive. So if you're unable to go to that, this is a really wonderful and interesting review of the state of the whole fungal world and how DNA has affected it. And I think you'll find that quite interesting. And also Megan Romberg, who is our educational or scholarship committee chair and our science advisor, is also going to give a talk. And then in February, we have Suzanne Simard, who's Dr. Suzanne Simard, I should say probably, the author of Finding the Mother Tree. I'm sure you've heard of that. That's a quite, so you definitely ought to put that on your calendar. I should have made that December meeting note. Sorry, I didn't catch that. I didn't change it, that's why, because I just wanted to reiterate, we have a website, which you probably know, you probably joined from the website. And we have a YouTube channel, which this presentation, all of the ones tonight, and all of our presentations, if you missed one, are on that website. And so if you want to go back and look at one, and also in 2022, we already have our Sequinota and Mushroom Fair dates established. So this came out a little small because it was a little bit much to do, so I won't make too much out of it, but the first two are related. That's why they're so small. I always thought of mycorrhiza as being, and if you're not familiar with the term, that's where fungi share nutrients with trees and plants, all 90% of plants, and in return the plants provide nutrients to the fungi. So I always thought it was a very beneficial, but as it turns out there's two papers that came out that at least have found evidence that it's not always true. In some cases, they reduce the growth of weeds, which is a good thing. This was a study that was done to try and have the mycorrhizal fungi actually reduce the problem with weeds. So I was surprised by that. And the second one was that this is even asters, which are probably the most common winter wildflower. They are absolutely obligate, which I would not have thought that was the case. And they're very dependent on them. So and they're also very prolific, which is kind of explains how good that is. So the second bullet there, we're all in the middle of COVID-19, of course, now Omicron. We're going to run out of Greek letters pretty soon before we finally decide it's the common cold once again, which it may be. But this was interesting in that they were using mycorrhizal associations to try and produce a reduction because traditionally herbs and fungi certainly in the Far East, China and Japan, have been used in medicinal products for years. And so the name of the program was, I thought I had it written down here, Mach something. Anyway, Mach 19. I thought Mach is speed. So I think, remember it was warp speed, that was the name of the program. So that stands for mushrooms and Chinese herbs for COVID-19. And they're using turkey tail and agarikon, which I'm sure you're familiar with turkey tail, but agarikon is the one Paul Stamets has always been proclaiming as the world's greatest medicinal. So the third bullet down, just to continue on the psilocybin story, there's a 233 test subjects of a London trial where they are testing it for depression, and it's proving out to be quite successful. They're going to phase C trials, which is or phase 3 trials. So that's probably going to hit the store shelves soon. And the next to last one is fungi coax to draw. That was the screen I showed you at the beginning. So if you've never heard of spalling, spalled wood is very highly sought after by woodworkers because it makes beautiful furniture. And it's natural. It's where two fungi are fighting each other inside the wood for control. And it creates these patterns. Well, this Danish company has come up with a way to make squares and circles, artificially with fungi. So that's what that was you were looking at, was a fungi sunset created by these people, which I think is pretty interesting subject. And lastly, we were again in the news, the London Financial Times of all things, it was called Postcard from Washington, D.C., Mushroom Hunt with MAWDC. So we're now international, if that's of any interest to you. Not that probably anybody outside of London would even know who the heck we were. So as I close here, we're going to start with a photo contest review for those of you who participated. For those of you not, you're probably going to appreciate some wonderful photos that Tom McCoy, the program chair, will lead. Then Elizabeth Hargrave is going to talk about mushroom decoration just in time for Christmas, or whatever you want to call it. And lastly, our main speaker will be Serenella Linares on the lore and legend of mushrooms.